One jet, one pilot, 60 seconds over target, 2 missiles, and 80 rockets. The result was catastrophic for Russian plans. The Su-25 landed at its forward airbase with 17 shrapnel holes in the tail, degraded hydraulics, and minor electrical damage. Ground crews swarmed the aircraft, assessing damage, making repairs. They had it repaired and flying again in 2 days. The pilot flew his next mission 48 hours later. This is what modern warfare looks like when you're fighting for survival. Ukrainian Su-25s are Soviet-era jets, subsonic, limited countermeasures, no stealth. On paper, they shouldn't survive in contested airspace against modern air defenses, but Ukrainian pilots have adapted. They've studied every Russian air defense system, learning engagement ranges, reaction times, blind spots. They fly missions that NATO pilots would consider suicidal, 100-meter altitude, pop-up attacks from terrain cover, diving through missile engagement zones. And they're surviving, not because their equipment is better. It's not. Not because they have technological superiority. They don't. They're surviving because they're fighting for their homes, because impossible becomes achievable when your family's survival depends on it, because determination and skill can overcome equipment advantages. This convoy strike proves something Russian commanders are still struggling to accept in this war. Better technology doesn't guarantee victory. The side that fights smarter, adapts faster, and takes calculated risks wins. Russian forces had superior air defenses, more equipment, better positioning. They still lost because the Ukrainian pilot knew his aircraft's capabilities better than Russian crews knew their system's limitations. Because Ukrainian intelligence provided perfect targeting, because the mission planning was flawless, and because when defending your homeland from invasion, you find ways to win that military doctrine says are impossible. Somewhere over eastern Ukraine today, another Su-25 is flying another mission against overwhelming odds. The pilot knows the risks, knows that Russian air defenses are improving, learning from every engagement. He's flying anyway because that's reality when you're fighting for survival. Safe becomes irrelevant. Impossible becomes just another mission brief. And aircraft that should be shot down keep flying, keep striking, keep winning. Russian convoys keep moving. Ukrainian jets keep hunting them. The war continues. But one thing is absolutely clear. Never underestimate pilots fighting for their homes. They'll penetrate defenses designed to stop them. They'll complete missions that should kill them. And they'll keep flying until the job is done. The convoy thought it was safe in broad daylight with air defense coverage. It was wrong. As he lifted off, Ukrainian ground controllers transmitted final updates. Convoy is exposed on open highway. Weather is clear, window is closing. You have authorization for immediate strike. The pilot pushed the throttle forward and turned east toward the sound of distant artillery fire. Below him, the landscape of war scrolled past. Shell-cratered fields, abandoned villages, smoke rising from recent battles. This was his country. These were his people. Failure wasn't an option. The Su-25 stayed low, barely 150 meters above the ground, using hills and tree lines to stay hidden from Russian radar. At this altitude, he was invisible until the last moment, but it also meant he had zero margin for error. One mistake, one wrong turn, and he'd hit the ground at 700 kilometers per hour. Wind buffeted the aircraft. Trees flashed past close enough to touch. His focus was absolute, every sense tuned to the mission ahead. Ukrainian controllers guided him through encrypted radio. Convoy at kilometer 47, maintaining speed, air defense is active and scanning. You are clear to proceed. The pilot's heart rate increased, but his hands remained steady. Years of training and combat experience had taught him to channel adrenaline into precision. He checked his weapon systems one final time. Missiles ready, rockets armed, targeting pod online. At 8 kilometers from the convoy, the moment of truth arrived. The pilot took a breath and pulled back on the stick. The Su-25 climbed sharply from 150 meters to 1,000 meters in seconds. G-forces pushed him deep into his seat. The sudden climb would light up every Russian radar screen within 50 kilometers. He'd have maybe 10 seconds before the air defense systems locked onto him. 10 seconds to acquire targets, lock on, and fire before Russian missiles turned him into a falling fireball. Through his targeting pod, he could see the convoy clearly, a long line of vehicles on the highway like ants marching in formation. And there, the two Pantsir systems, one at the front and one at the rear, their radar dishes rotating as they searched for threats. Even from this distance, he could see how lethal they were. Multi-barrel cannons ready to fill the sky with explosive shells. Missile tubes loaded with interceptors that could catch and kill aircraft traveling at supersonic speeds. His targeting computer locked onto the first Pantsir. Range 11 kilometers. The system beeped, solid lock. He fired the first laser-guided missile without waiting to see if it hit. He immediately locked onto the second Pantsir and fired again. Two missiles streaking toward the targets at over 1,000 kilometers per hour. Flight time, 18 seconds. And in those 18 seconds, both Pantsir systems detected the launches and began firing back. The first Pantsir's radar tracked the incoming missile and launched two interceptors. Its automated cannons also opened fire, creating a wall of exploding shells between the convoy and the incoming threat. The sky erupted in black puffs of detonating ammunition, each burst capable of shredding an aircraft. But the Ukrainian pilot had already released countermeasures, clouds of aluminum chaff that created false radar signals bigger than his actual jet. The Pantsir countermissiles locked onto the chaff and exploded harmlessly. The Ukrainian missile, guided by an invisible laser beam, ignored all countermeasures. It struck the Pantsir's radar array with 90 kilograms of high explosive. The radar dish shattered, electronics sparked and died. The system went from deadly threat to useless scrap metal in less than a second. The second Pantsir had 3 extra seconds of warning. Its crew were experienced, well-trained. They fired 4 missiles and filled the sky with cannon fire, unleashing everything they had. One of their rounds clipped the incoming missile stabilizer fin, causing it to wobble. For a moment, it looked like the missile might miss, but laser guidance compensated for the damage, making micro-adjustments to keep it on target. The missile slammed into the Pantsir's chassis, detonating between the missile tubes and crew compartment. The vehicle didn't explode, it simply stopped working. Smoke poured from its electronics as the crew scrambled to evacuate, abandoning their burning platform. Both air defense systems neutralized in 20 seconds. The convoy was now defenseless, exposed on open highway with no protection from air attack. Russian officers on the ground realized what was happening and started screaming into radios for help. But the nearest air defense battery was 30 kilometers away, too far to engage. The convoy had gone from protected to doomed in the time it takes to drink a cup of coffee. The pilot didn't hesitate. He pulled up again, climbing to 1,800 meters for a rocket attack run. This was the moment everything had been building toward. At 1,800 meters and 8 kilometers from the convoy, he armed his rocket pods. 80 unguided rockets. Each one carried enough explosive to destroy a vehicle or kill everyone in a 10-meter radius. The targeting computer calculated trajectories, wind speed, target spread. He fired 20 rockets, leaving the pods in 2 seconds, trailing white smoke. Then another 20, and another. The targeting computer spread the impacts along the convoy's entire length. From the ground, it looked like the sky had caught fire. 80 white smoke trails arching downward, each one carrying death. Russian soldiers looked up in horror as the rockets descended. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, just open highway and incoming destruction. The rockets struck in waves. A fuel truck erupted into a massive fireball that engulfed 3 nearby vehicles. The explosion was so intense that soldiers 200 meters away felt the heat wash over them. An ammunition carrier took a direct hit. The explosion was so huge it shattered windows in villages 5 kilometers away. The shockwave knocked soldiers off their feet. More rockets hammered the highway. Infantry fighting vehicles flipped from near-miss impacts, landing upside down in ditches. Transport trucks disintegrated, reduced to twisted metal and burning debris. A command vehicle's antenna arrays melted from the heat of nearby explosions. Russian soldiers abandoned their vehicles and ran for ditches, but rockets were still falling. The 4-kilometer highway became a corridor of fire, smoke, and twisted metal. Secondary explosions rippled through the convoy as ammunition cooked off. The pilot didn't watch the full devastation. He was already diving back toward low altitude, deploying more countermeasures because now every Russian unit within 30 kilometers knew exactly where he was, and they all wanted him dead. Warning tones screamed in his headset. multiple radar locks, missile launches detected. A TOR missile system 22 kilometers away had achieved lock and fired 2 missiles. Mach 3, closing fast. The pilot dove hard, 1,800 meters down to 100 meters in seconds. G-forces crushed him into his seat, threatening to black him out. But the Su-25 held together, its rugged construction proving its worth. At 100 meters altitude, racing at maximum speed, he used terrain to break radar locks, flying through valleys, behind hills, using every geographic feature. But Russian crews had learned from previous engagements. A TOR crew had positioned on high ground, giving them line of sight over the terrain. 2 missiles launched. Time to impact, 14 seconds. The pilot's hands moved automatically. Chaff, flares, electronic jamming, all deployed simultaneously. His jamming pod created false radar returns. Flares burned hotter than his engines. The first missile tracked a flare and self-destructed. The second lost lock in the chaff cloud, but continued on inertial guidance, passing 100 meters behind the Su-25 before detonating. Shrapnel tore into the aircraft's tail. Warning lights flashed, hydraulic pressure dropping, control surfaces damaged. The jet shuddered violently but stayed airborne. The pilot kept flying low, weaving through valleys, staying under 150 meters. Behind him, Russian missiles were exploding where he'd been seconds ago, not where he was now. His training had saved him. His skill had kept him alive. 15 minutes after the attack began, he crossed back into Ukrainian airspace. Fuel was low but sufficient. The aircraft was damaged but flying. He radioed base. Mission complete, returning damaged but controlled. Control responded. Good hits confirmed. Multiple vehicles destroyed. RTB when ready. Return to base. He'd survived. Ukrainian drones circled over the convoy wreckage, streaming video back to command centers. The footage was devastating. 23 vehicles. 9 were completely destroyed, burning wrecks that would never move again. 8 more were damaged and immobilized, their crews either dead or fleeing. 6 were abandoned, intact but trapped behind debris and craters. The fuel truck fire burned for 3 hours, sending black smoke high into the sky, visible from 20 kilometers away. The ammunition explosion had cratered the highway. The road was completely blocked. Russian recovery teams arrived hours later with heavy equipment, working frantically to salvage what they could before Ukrainian artillery found them. They managed to recover 4 damaged vehicles before retreating. The rest were too destroyed or too exposed. The convoy that was supposed to deliver critical supplies to Avdiivka never arrived. Russian units went another week without ammunition and reinforcements. Some withdrew under pressure. Some surrendered when their positions became untenable. The defensive line weakened.